President Trump just said that opportunity zones are the #1 economic development program ever. So, what does this mean for the future of the Opportunity Zones program? I'm Andy Hagans. He's Jimmy Atkinson, and we'll be discussing this story and a whole lot more on today's OZ News Hour.
We're talking about opportunity zones. We're talking about opportunity zones.
Are you looking to take your opportunity zone strategy to the next level, but maybe you don't know where to go? OZ Insiders offers comprehensive premium content and networking to help you get started. Our monthly masterclass meetings cover a wide range of topics, from fundamentals to advanced, ensuring you have what you need to thrive. As a member of OZ Insiders, you'll get access to our exclusive online community, monthly group coaching, and monthly masterclasses, providing you with valuable OZ networking opportunities and guidance from the best opportunity zones professionals in the industry. Whether you're a beginner or looking to get to the next level, we have what you need. Visit ozinsiders.com to learn more. That's ozinsiders.com. Andy, back to you.
Jim, we have a ton of news to discuss today. I'm just going to jump right in, okay? Ever since the election happened, the incoming Trump administration started talking about their cabinet, and then we've had some confirmation hearings, but there hasn't really been a lot of news specifically for the Opportunity Zones program, aficionados of the program like you and me. And I think that all really changed in this past week, starting with I think these are bombshell comments that he made. Would you agree with that, Jimmy?
Yeah, they are bombshell comments. And I want to give a shout out to Barrett Lindbergh. He's where I first heard about these comments from, and then multiple other sources have reported it as well. Jill Homan, her OZ newsletter. But Barrett, thanks for the tweet here. He says, "We're talking OZ. Let's extend and expand this program in 2025. And it was last Thursday, I believe, at an event at the White House honoring Black History Month, where Donald Trump made these comments. Andy, I'm just going to go ahead and play the video here, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
The contribution you've made, Tim, is incredible. Opportunity Zone, so many people, he's the father of Opportunity Zone. I'm just the son, he's the father, because he came into the White House, the Oval Office, with this idea. And it's probably the #1 economic development project ever in our country. And I want to give Senator Tim Scott the credit for it.
So great shout out to Senator Tim Scott, who was in the audience at that event. And Donald Trump didn't hold back his compliments toward opportunity zones. Andy, what do you make of this, though?
Well, I've heard some of my more liberal relatives refer to President Trump as a son of a something, but I've never heard him. He says he's the son of an opportunity zone. So that's a new one. I like that. But, I think it's a shot in the arm for anyone who wants an extension, anyone who is hoping that, Congress will include an extension for the program in tax legislation this year. The truth of the matter, like it, love it, or hate it, how this administration communicates these kind of video clips, the things that end up on social media and on Twitter, Jimmy, they matter. Like they really matter. They influence Congress, right?
They do. And it's one of the most common questions I get. Probably the single most common question that I've gotten over the past 12 months, Andy, is, hey, what's happening with opportunity zones? Is Trump going to extend opportunity zones? Does he even like opportunity zones? Is Congress going to pass opportunity zone legislation? What's happening with OZ legislation? All different versions of the same comment or the same question, which basically boils down to, are opportunity zones going away at the end of 2026? Because currently that's the plan if no action is taken.
Right.
And this is yet another signal from the White House, Andy, and from President Trump himself, that he likes opportunity zones quite a bit, and he wants opportunity zones to be extended and renewed for sure.
He claims he's not the father of the program. He's the son of the program. I just a great...
It was a pretty good ramble, right? It was a little bit incoherent. It was a little bit of a ramble. But I think, yes, the thought was, hey, I really like OZs is what he's saying here.
Absolutely. And like I said, the messaging, even off the cuff rambling from President Trump, it does matter. It does sometimes get translated into policy. So I do think that was important news coming this past week. But we also, Jimmy, have some new champions, let's say champions of the OZ program, OZ champions, who are now officially part of the Trump administration. Tell us more.
We do, and we've talked about some of these champions over the past couple of episodes, but just within the past month since our last episode of OZ News Hour, we've gotten official Senate confirmation to different cabinet positions. For this first article from CNN covers Secretary Scott Bessent of the Treasury is officially confirmed now, and Scott Bessent has been I don't know if he's been a champion of opportunity zones. That might be a stretch, but he's definitely been vocally supportive of the program. And during his Senate confirmation hearing, Senator Tim Scott was asking him some questions, and Scott Bessent noted that opportunity zones he thinks are fantastic for building housing to try to attack our nation's housing crisis. In so many words, is what he said about opportunity zones. So he's a key figure in all of this, Andy, because also it's his department, the Treasury Department, IRS specifically within the Treasury Department, that regulates the program. So the fact that Scott Bessent views opportunity zones favorable, very positive news, Andy. Any comments from you before we move on to our next confirmation?
No. So who is the other confirmation?
Yeah, the other confirmation, and this comes from Fox News. This article is former NFL player Scott Turner has been officially confirmed as the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, otherwise known as HUD, as we refer to it. He truly has been a big champion of the OZ program for the past 5 years. He was named the director of the White House Opportunity Zone and Revitalization Council, a position and an office that President Trump created inside of the White House in 2019 after opportunity zones became law. And he was basically President Trump's opportunity zone czar for his first term. And so the fact that he brought him back, not just to be the OZ guy within the White House, but to lead all of HUD, speaks volumes to how much confidence President Trump places in this individual, Scott Turner, but also how important opportunity zones are, that he named the former OZ czar to be the head of HUD. I think this is a really big deal here, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, these are early in the year, let's say in February, where we're hoping that the Congress takes up and passes some sort of tax legislation. We have to kind of read the tea leaves, right? And Jimmy, somebody might accuse us of reading too much into little announcements here and there. But I have to say, this is like starting to feel like a pattern of opportunity zone news, right? Just key players being confirmed. They're talking about opportunity zones. Then we hear President Trump talk about opportunity zones, not just talking about them off the cuff, but in very glowing terms, saying that they're the most important, the best, the number one economic development program in the history of the country, possibly. So I think collectively, we have to say this is all bullish.
It's absolutely bullish. And just one other comment I'll make here, Andy, before we can move on, is that I heard word from one of my contacts inside of HUD that during the Biden administration, he was basically told not to do anything with opportunity zones. So he was a very vocal member of our communities and would come to our webinars, and we didn't hear from him for 4 years, basically. And he's just come back out of the woodwork now, and he said, "Hey, we just got word we're good to go for opportunity zones. Secretary Turner's back in the office, and we've been charged with learning more about opportunity zones and re-engaging with the opportunity zones industry." So it's a huge shot in the arm that the federal government is now caring about and paying attention to the opportunity zones industry in a way that they just clearly weren't during the previous administration. And I'll also note, I did have Scott Turner on my podcast a couple of times during President Trump's first term in the White House. We'll link to these episodes in the show notes for today's episode of OZ News Hour. And he outlines how he thinks opportunity zones should be leveraged by the federal government to advance certain policy goals. And I'm hoping to get Secretary Turner now back on the podcast at some point, maybe later this year. We'll see, Andy.
Now, hopefully all of the officials that you named, or including the anonymous employee, hopefully they all answer that email that they have to send to Doge explaining that the 5 things they did this week, so that they're not part of the group who gets jettisoned. No, but seriously, this is all good news. This is bullish. And Jimmy, hopefully by this time next month, We're talking about some additional, some new remarks that President Trump makes about the program, because I think you and me, we're doing our utmost to talk about the program, to keep it in the public eye, to cheerlead it, to talk about its many successes, but our platform not quite as big as President Trump's, right? So when he talks about it, it really does move the needle.
He has about 1 million, maybe a few million more followers on X than we do, Andy. But we're making hay. And I did want to point out that we're going to cover this in great detail at OZ Pitch Day, our live event on Thursday, March 6th. I'm going to scroll through the agenda right now. The agenda is filling up very nicely. We've got quite a few sponsors who are going to present their investment offerings. But as it relates to this discussion, our afternoon panel, starting a little after 1 p.m. Eastern time, will be focused on Trump's Opportunity Zone plan for 2025. And I'm really excited about this panel because I think it's going to offer a lot of insight into Trump's one big, beautiful bill, and specifically what's going to be in there, and then what is going to be contained within the Opportunity Zone portion of that bill. I'm joined by two real experts in the industry. Emily Lavery from Fulcrum Public Affairs. She used to work in Senator Tim Scott's office. She's been a very vocal leader and has led the lobbying campaign at Congress for some of this Opportunity Zone extension and renewal legislation. So it's going to be great to hear from her. And then Peter Lawrence is Novogradac and Company's, I like to call him their inside man, their Washington, D.C. insider. He's at Capitol Hill quite a bit, and he knows probably, I don't think anybody knows more about the inner workings of Congress and Opportunity Zone legislation than Peter does. So two really influential figures who are going to be joining me on that panel that afternoon, Andy.
And I can't wait. I registered on day one when you opened access.
You did.
Just reminder to everyone, it's absolutely free to sign up. You can watch part of Pitch Day. You can watch the whole thing. I mean, obviously we have some people who just come for the panels or come for certain pitches. Some people like to stay for the whole show. I know I do. But absolutely go ahead and register. It's free, doesn't cost anything except about 30 seconds of your time.
And you can head over to ozpitchday.com to learn more about that event and to get registered today, Andy.
So Jimmy, I want to tell our audience about our brand new show. And here's the thing.
Please do.
We love OZ News Hour. We love the Opportunity Zones podcast. And Jimmy, you have the #1 show in the Opportunity Zone space, but it's a very niche industry. You know, I think all things considered, our new show is a little bit broader, and it's been a little bit more popular in terms of its growth right out of the gate. You see, Jimmy, we've been talking over the past several years with OpportunityZones.com and OZ Insiders. We've talked with so many fund sponsors or aspiring fund sponsors who want to syndicate a real estate deal or start a fund or raise capital for a deal, but the whole process is overwhelming, and there's certain places where people tend to get stuck. So we launched a brand new show to help anyone to launch their own fund, raise capital, or do their first real estate syndication. Tell us about Fund Playbook, Jimmy.
Yeah, that's right, Andy. Well, it's our new show, our new platform where you can learn how to start your own private fund or real estate syndication, or raise capital if you want to scale your own private fund or real estate syndication. We've got a brand new show. It's a podcast, but it's also a video show. We have a YouTube channel where we are at. If you go to youtube.com/fundplaybook. And then we're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. We have an audio only version of the show. And, you know, our first few episodes, we've covered how to start your own private fund, how to find your first investors. And we also, just last week, a few days ago, we had an episode on raising capital by using urgency in your sales and marketing process, Andy. It's something that even the most sophisticated capital raisers can struggle with sometimes. It's always a struggle raising capital, or it can be during certain times. So we've helped unlock some of the secrets, some of the formula to actually getting your syndication or fund up and running. First of all, what you need to set up, how you position yourself, but then also once you have it all up and running, how do you actually get some investors in the door? How do you bring dollars into your checking account so you can deploy capital into your deals, Andy? So that's a little bit about what we are teaching over at Fund Playbook. And you can learn more about that platform and the show by heading over to fundplaybook.com.
Yeah, and Jimmy, to me, my favorite part about Fun Playbook is the fact that we live stream it every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe so you can join in those live streams. We get questions and comments, during the show. And honestly, a lot of the content, the ground that we cover during the show is from those user questions that we get from the community. This show, by the way, is also live. We just got a comment.
Andy, we are, by the way, I just want to note, we just launched this less than a month ago. We have 99 subscribers at Fun Playbook. So you could be the 100th subscriber if you act now. No prize, but let's see. You wanted to go to the comments here?
Yeah, well, and we're getting great questions at Fun Playbook, and we also encourage interaction on this show. Of course, we got a comment. Glad to hear the green light for OZs, referring to President Trump's comment. Yeah, I'd call it a green light, Jimmy. Would you? I think
it's a green light from the president. Now, unfortunately, the president is, in this case, he's not the king, so he can't just decree opportunity zones into existence. But he has to work through Congress to get that accomplished. So it's going to be up to Congress, the House and the Senate, to work together to pass meaningful tax legislation that will include OZs. But once that bill hits President Trump's desk, there's no question he'll sign it. And we're looking forward to the day that comes to fruition. But it might be some amount of weeks or months before that does transpire. But definitely green light from President Trump, at least, that he wants to see OZs live a long life.
And in the meantime, you can stay abreast and take a deep dive into various facets of the OZ program with OZ Insiders, our mastermind group that we host masterclasses every single month. Jimmy, can you give us a recap of the last masterclass that we just produced?
Yeah, the last one we had was earlier this month on February 10th. We do these the second Monday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And Todd Vitzhum of Akara joined us to teach a masterclass. And it really was a masterclass on how to underwrite commercial real estate in 2025. It was a brilliant class. I learned a lot about it. And, we got some insights into how Todd was thinking about cap rates and rent growth or lack thereof. And which markets he likes, and it was really insightful. And I would say, he tailored his presentation to focus on opportunity zone deals, but I think a lot of the lessons that he shared with us during that masterclass a couple of weeks ago applied to non-OZ deals as well. If you head over to ozinsiders.com/calendar, you can see all of the past masterclasses that we have done at OZ Insiders. We've done over a dozen of them now because we've been running this group for over a year. We've done classes on securities law, on salvaging blown funds and QOZBs. We've done one or two on what we think OZ legislation will look like in 2025. And so this one was with Emily Lavery back in November, shortly after the election. I like this one so much, I'm bringing her on in front of the OZ Pitch Day crowd in a couple more weeks here on March 6th, Andy. So our next one coming up, though, is, well, I like this guy. If I can be honest and not so humble for a moment, I'm teaching the next one, and I'm going to be teaching a masterclass on introduction to launching a private equity fund. So it's actually going to take a lot of what we're developing at Fund Playbook and distill it into a quick 45-minute intro course for my OZ Insiders members. So if you're at all interested in learning about what we have coming up, you can go to ozinsiders.com/calendar. You'll see the full calendar of events and masterclasses that we have. We also host 3 dinners per year. So if you go to our website, you can see where we're going to host dinners this year. We just did our previous one that we did at the end of last year was in Washington, D.C., just before the Novogradac conference out there. We'll do another one in DC later this November, but we'll hit up 2 other cities between now and then for sure. So if you want to learn more about joining the group, if you want to see what we've done in the past, head over to ozinsiders.com to learn more.
Thanks, Jimmy. And before we move on to the next story, I had a question for you, kind of calling back to talking about the green light for the OZ legislation for the extension.
Yes.
I remember one of our shows, probably like November of last year, or maybe December, you mentioned that any tax legislation passed in 2025 was likely to be at the very end of the year, like in late December, like maybe December 31st or something, who knows, but very late in the year. But since then, I've heard a couple people say, well, there's a chance that it could happen earlier. And maybe some of the signs that we're seeing right now means it could happen earlier. Why is that? If it happens earlier than December, why would that be? And when would it likely to be addressed by Congress? If not,
great question. I don't have a crystal ball, or if I do, it's very murky. So what I'm going to do for the next minute or two here is I will speculate on.
That's what I want. I want wild speculation.
Yeah, best case scenario and worst case scenario. Well, first of all, worst case scenario is Congress can't figure it out and no tax legislation gets passed and OZs expire at the end of 2026. That is still a possibility. I mean, until President Trump signs this stuff into law, anything can happen. Really, anything can happen. So let's not count our chickens before they hatch. I do think there's a better chance than not that OZs do get extended and renewed, but there is a chance that doesn't happen. So I don't want anybody counting their chickens before they hatch. I thought, and I part of me still does think that this is going to drag out to the end of the year. And if you look back at what happened in 2017, Trump's first year in office, in his first term, is when he passed his Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. He signed that into law. I think it was December 22nd of 2017. So it was the very end of the year, right before the winter break, or they took their recess for Christmas time and New Year. Basically, they basically kicked the can down the road until the 11th hour. And so I was kind of expecting something similar is going to happen. Congress likes to procrastinate. Members like to wait as long as they can to make sure that they use the timing as a bargaining chip to make sure that they get their special interests packaged into the bill. But what happened last week, I think it was last week or the week before, is that Trump signaled that he does like the House version of passing his agenda better than the Senate version. So what does that mean? Well, what the Senate wanted to do was they wanted to pass Trump's agenda in two big bills, one that would deal with the border and defense and a handful of other things, and then a totally separate bill that would deal with just tax legislation and budget reconciliation. Okay. So the thought there was that they would do the non-tax stuff first. That would be a big priority. And then they would wait to do budget reconciliation in the second half of the year. And probably November, December is when anything would actually get passed, if it gets passed at all. Well, just earlier this month, last week or the week before, President Trump said, I actually like the House version better. And what the House wants to do is they want one big, beautiful bill in all caps, as Trump likes to say or tweet on X. And so that takes everything, the tax stuff, the budget reconciliation, the defense spending, the border security, a whole slate of other Trump issues in his agenda, and puts it into one big bill. Well, with tax kind of riding along into that one big bill, this is a huge priority for Trump to get that passed as soon as possible. So it might not take until the end of December. There's some people are speculating maybe this happens in the first half of the year. I'm still dubious of that, Andy. I think it's probably going to take a little longer than we think. Also, they might go down that road and then realize, oh, this isn't working. Let's do the Senate version instead. And now they're a few months behind. So all speculation from me. I don't know any better than anybody else does. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people know a lot better than I do what might happen. But there is a chance, Andy, that it doesn't take till the 11th hour to get some OZ extension and renewal legislation passed by President Trump, for sure.
Yeah, and I guess if I could speculate, and thank you, that was a very, very good analysis. I have a lot more context now. If I could speculate, the strategy of one, quote, big, beautiful bill where you're combining tax and fiscal and maybe some immigration things together is, the tax reform, the tax bill, there's a few contentious issues in there, right? Like the SALT deduction cap, and some other issues like that. I think Trump has talked about limiting the carried interest deduction, and so there's some different issues that might allow.
There's renewable stuff too that Biden passed as part of his Inflation Reduction Act that they're not really sure, or I'm not really sure at least what they want to do with that. But there's been some speculation that Trump might want to roll some of that back. But yeah, to suffice it to say, there's a lot of issues that they need to tackle in that
right. Right. So where if it were a tax bill alone, you could see one or two or three or 4 Republicans peeling off their support
Mhm.
and voting no or not present on just a tax bill. But
Yep.
if they combine it, I think, with immigration or some of these other issues, I think that may be a way to whip the Republicans into all being present and supporting the bill, even if there are some controversial aspects of it that may not be popular in their individual districts. They might.
They can hold their nose and vote yay anyway if it covers the vast majority of what their constituents might find important. Correct.
Exactly. So that might be the strategy, and maybe it's the case of, well, let's try this first, and if this doesn't work, then we know what the plan B is. The plan B is the Senate plan.
I think that's exactly right, Andy. Well, time will tell, right?
That's right. So, Jimmy, for our next story, you pulled out some data, some new data from Novogradac, and my compliments to Novogradac. They always have the best data, but something really jumped out to you in this release.
That's right, Andy. So this is every quarter, Novogradac releases their OZ capital raising survey data. And they just announced that according to their survey respondents, more than $40 billion in equity has been raised as of the end of 2024. So big milestone that they cleared. You can see here's a slope of the graph of capital raised, or I should say equity raised by qualified opportunity funds over time. You can see it slowed considerably over the past couple of years here, Andy. Now, I extrapolate the data from this out to the actual amount of being well north of 150 billion, because they're not able to track all of the qualified opportunity funds. And they even note that they're probably only capturing about 1/4 to 1/3 of the total OZ universe. Anyways, we've talked about that quite extensively on this show for the past few years. But the thing I wanted to scroll down to and really cover today was the top 50 cities for planned qualified opportunity fund investment. They update this table. I think they update this once a year, and they have, you can see, Andy, here you've got a few different columns here. Los Angeles tops the list of the top opportunity zone city in the country. 56 investments totaling over $1.7 billion. They were also number one at the end of 2023. So you can see some movement in the table here, although the top 3 cities remain the same: LA, Washington, New York. Andy, just kind of looking at the top 10 or 15 or so, this goes all the way down to 50. I don't think we'll talk about all 50, but we can talk about the top 10 or so, right, Andy?
That's right.
What sticks out at you? Any commentary that you want to make here?
You know, it's interesting when I see the Sunbelt cities, you know, your Phoenix, your Nashville, your Charlotte, because obviously those cities saw tremendous investment over the past, 10 years, ground up development, ground up construction. But then, you kind of get the vibe that some of them, they've fallen out of favor. Like maybe there's so much multifamily supply coming online right now this year and next year that they've slowed down. So it's interesting to see those Sunbelt cities, remain in the top 10, the top 15. And Cleveland, I have to say, Cleveland really jumps out, kind of a Midwest city. I see Columbus, I see number 16, that one maybe makes it a little bit more sense because there's been, the Intel investing in Columbus and the whole, university's economic weight there. But I would say, overall, I guess it's nice to see the staying power of the Sun Belt. So the investment trend of investing in those cities, in those regions of the United States, it doesn't look like it's going to reverse anytime soon. And I have to say, Jimmy, the Opportunity Zones program has been a big part of that.
Absolutely, Andy. It's interesting that Cleveland and Columbus are both on here. And I wonder if that has anything at all to do with the tax credit the state of Ohio provides to qualified opportunity funds, further incentivizing OZ development in that state. Also, the number of OZ investments is really interesting. They're the only 2 in the top 20, probably the only 2 in the whole list that have well north of 100 investments. So that, first of all, I'm not 100% sure what number of investments means. Does that mean number of qualified opportunity funds, or it might mean number of projects? And then that would lead me to believe maybe it's a lot of single family homes or smaller apartment buildings as opposed to Central Valley, California, maybe it's 4 huge commercial projects, and this might be, 131 single family homes and then 1 medium size apartment building. I'm just speculating here. Same thing in Columbus too. And I know our friend Clint Edgington from the Nest Opportunity Fund, as well as Graham Allison from OZ Development Group are doing a number of smaller deals in Columbus, Ohio. So, one other city that jumps out to me, Andy, and I want to get your take on this. You mentioned Doge earlier. What about Washington here? Washington, D.C. Being number 2. Do you think Washington, D.C. has staying power up near the top of this list, or could their housing market, maybe their economy as a whole, be in a little bit of trouble going forward here?
Yeah, it's funny, Jimmy. I guess here's what I really think. This is my biased, unfiltered, honest opinion. In the long run, it's pretty hard to shrink the Leviathan, right? In the long run, I wouldn't bet against Washington, D.C. and the housing market there. Just that federal spigot of cash and spending and overspending. That being said, it does seem like Doge and Elon Musk and some of the cost cutting that they're doing and is moving the needle. I mean, I don't remember the exact search keywords, but I saw a pretty funny story with some Google search trends about, in the Washington, D.C. greater metro area, there was a spike in searches for criminal defense attorney when they started investigating all of these expenditures from USAID and all of these other programs. So it does seem like Doge is moving the needle, and I suppose there is a chance that that's going to show up in some of this real estate data. But on the other hand, Jimmy, real estate is like the slow moving market that tends to lag things, whereas the Doge is moving very, very quickly. So if it shows up in the data, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I don't think it's going to be like in the next quarter or anything like that.
Yeah, we do have some article. I'm trying to see if I can find one here right now. Yeah, I'm going to bring this one up on the screen right here. This is from Urban Turf. Okay, I haven't vetted this publication. I just did a quick Google, and this was one of the top results that came up. But Doge Housing Tracker, new listings rise in DC area over the last week. This was published just earlier today, just a few minutes ago, I think. So let's see. I think I remember seeing a couple of headlines that MLS listings in the DC area were spiking over the past couple of weeks here, Andy, because I do think there's quite a few federal employees that are losing their jobs, and there's nothing for them in DC, and they're moving is the thought process. But it might be something that we have to keep an eye on and come back to in another month or two and see if this does have any staying power or not. Andy, one other comment that I wanted to make on here, and then I'll see if you have any other comments, is that 3 of the top 15 cities, is that right? Yeah, 3 of the top. 4 of the top. Los Angeles, New York, Central Valley, California, and then we'll go down here to Sacramento, California, are located in states, namely California and New York State, that do not conform to the federal opportunity zone tax policy, meaning that if you make investments in those states, you're still liable for New York or California state capital gains tax rates. And yet, in spite of that huge tax headwind, they're some of the most popular locations to make opportunities on investment. So I find that fairly interesting. So, I was criticizing California. I have criticized California and New York and a handful of other states on this show numerous times for not conforming to the policy, but maybe the joke's on us, right? Maybe they're collecting their tax revenue and they're getting some big OZ development. Any thoughts there, Andy?
No, I mean, you can't argue with the data. That brings to mind Strip Mall guy on Twitter who lives in New York, and he and his group, they go and they buy around underperforming strip malls with a value add strategy, and they buy all the time in California. And he says, hey, property taxes are actually pretty low in a lot of places, and it's more it's more of a friendly state to operate as a real estate operator than a lot of people would think. That being said, with the wildfires and everything, and hearing about some of the permitting horror stories I think you better really know what you're doing. And maybe that's why some of the projects in California, in New York, in some of these more development hostile type states tend to have the larger developments, right? Because you have to be pretty big, pretty sophisticated, and pretty connected, I think, to build in a lot of these cities.
I'm sure that's true, Andy. That's a good point there. So, yeah, that I think that's a pretty good summary of the list here. I was somewhat disappointed that I didn't see Fort Worth, Texas on here, although there aren't a lot of opportunity zones in Fort Worth. I think the number of opportunity zones in each of these locations is obviously a huge variable that factors in. Quite a few opportunity zones in Cleveland and in Columbus. As we pointed out, those two cities earlier, and quite a few in Washington, D.C. also. So, Andy, I think that does it for our top list of cities. Thank you, Novogradac, for providing that data for us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Jimmy, I think you just live in too nice of a place, right, to have too many opportunity zones. But we're almost out of time. But before we go, Jimmy, what is your pick of the month? What are you watching, reading, or listening to in the world of opportunity zones that you would recommend to our audience?
Yeah, well, we started with a tweet from Barrett Lindbergh, and my tip of the hat this month is also to Barrett Lindbergh and his company, Savoy Equity Partners. They're going to be one of our sponsors at OZ Pitch Day on March 6th. And I just read this article titled "The Marcus Affordable and Workforce Housing Project to Bring 76 New Apartments to South Dallas." This is a joint venture with Elevate Impact Capital, and Savoy Equity Partners is going to be the development company on this project. So congratulations to Barrett Lindbergh and Elevate Impact Capital. I just had Elevate's CEO, Noelle St. Clair Lentz, on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. She's quoted in this article saying that the housing affordability crisis continues to plague low-income families and workers in South Dallas. And, you know, what I really like about this particular project, Andy, and I know this is really Barrett's bread and butter, is that he likes to develop locations in Dallas where he doesn't have to pay property taxes. And the way he's able to do that is he's able to come to agreements with the city of Dallas to offer a certain percentage of the apartment units as restricted income, rent-controlled income for workforce housing. So in this particular case, and I'll just read this sentence here that'll explain it better than I could. Through a public facilities corporation tax exemption agreement with the city of Dallas, 51% of the units on this building being developed by Barrett will be formally rent restricted and income restricted for a period of 60 years to be affordable to renters earning 60% to 80% of the AMI. So this is what Barrett does on, I think, the bulk of his opportunity zone projects, and great that he's been able to ink a JV deal with Elevate Impact Capital and the city of Dallas as well. So kind of a win-win, bringing some affordable housing to the city of Dallas through the opportunity zone policy, Andy.
I love it.
Andy, what's yours? What's your pick this month?
Well, you know, I have to call back to OZ Pitch Day and specifically 2 segments on the agenda. So this is a draft agenda. It kind of changes all the way up until OZ Pitch Day with any last-minute sponsors that decide to pitch. But I want to bring everyone's attention to Your Space America, who will be presenting, I believe, at 11:10 a.m.
Yeah, let's scroll down there. There you go.
Yeah, but, you know, self-storage, their asset class, is always popular with our audience, with attendees at OZ Pitch Day. They always have a great presentation, up-to-the-minute market data. So I always enjoy that one. And then Jimmy asked...
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention a thank you to Your Space America. They have agreed to be our title partner for this edition of OZ Pitch Day. So thank you to Ross and his team at Your Space America for your tremendous support. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. And then the panel, Jimmy, Ask the OZ Experts, where we'll have Andrew Daup, Brett Siglin, Mr. Ashley Tyson, and yourself. This is one of the most popular sessions every single OZ Pitch Day. We always get a huge audience, especially really throughout the day. We have different people who are watching different things, but this is one of the peak times, I believe, where we have just a ton of people interacting and asking questions. I always enjoy that one. Again, ozpitchday.com. You can sign up and attend for free. that's about it for today's show. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget, smash that like button, leave us a comment, let us know you enjoyed it, or share it with a friend. That really helps us reach new people. Again, we'll be back in a month with our next edition. Thank you for watching and listening. And Jimmy, thank you for joining me on today's show.
Thank you, Andy. See you guys next time.